And I talked about the Koan before, but there was one phrase that I like to look at from the book of Masakazu Nakayama. And he's talking about the Dogen. And Shobo Genzo is the book he's talking about. And one koan that he talks about is this one, about the life and death. The koan is fairly simple, usually a few sentences. So let me start to talk with that one that he describes here. If you have Buddha in life and death, there's no life and death. Also, if there's no Buddha in life and death, there's no worry to process life and death. These are the words from two different Zen monks. So that's a phrase in Shobo Genzo from Dogen. The point is that when you say within life and death there is Buddha, in one sentence, the other one is within life and death there is no Buddha. So there's the paradoxical point. But Dogen is pointing, you figure out how to go beyond this paradox. So that's a difficult Zen approach. And the point is to find the solution on your own instead of waiting someone to tell you what is the solution. Because if you believe in other people's solution and live your life, you may not get the whole point of this person's interpretation. So at the end, each person needs to be responsible, if that's the right word, to find a path to live your life. And if you don't, you may be swinging this way and that way. So being afraid of that, Zen approach or the Koan approach is to pose the question, and there are hundreds and even thousands of koans, and that's how they train the monk. And the way they do it is that, let's say there's master and the student. So the student will get a koan, listen to the sound of the one and clapping, maybe one. There may be various or 1,000 others. But what I just mentioned could be the koan that you would do, you would resolve, and then talk with the master what you resolved and how you interpret or understood. And the master would say, well, that's not enough, and ring the bell. And then the student go back and meditate, sit, think through, and then come back next day and may go through the process. So it's a training of how to go beyond the paradox, which is like finding the wisdom. Because as we live our life, there are many puzzles. Which one is more important than others? Or how to find the way to live your life. So let's go back. When there's Buddha, there's no life and death. Let's see. The way I can say something about it would be, when you say there's Buddha in life and death, I would, let's say, replace the word Buddha to what I mentioned in the other videos as the laws of the universe. So what I say there is that if there's life and death, but if you have the functioning of law and of the universe, there's no word like life and death. You just go with the flow. The thought of life and death is gone, and therefore the worries and how to live and so forth is replaced by the law of nature. Or I mentioned the Myokoni on Shin Buddhism, in their case replaced by the Amida Buddha. So when there is Amida Buddha, there is no life and death. In other words, you go beyond the worries, anxieties of life and death. So that's one way to answer to the first one. The second one says, since there is no Buddha in life and death, you don't be bothered or worried about life and death. So let's look into it. What is the state when there's no Buddha in life and death? So if I replace the word, the law of nature, if you don't have a law of nature or Buddha, then you don't get bothered by the law of nature. So when I say you don't have the Buddha or law of nature, what is that state? In other words, you can say that when you don't have Buddha or law of nature, you are one with law of nature, but because you don't see what the law of nature is or Buddha is, and therefore you, like I used the word, what's the word I used? Ride the wave of the universe. You are in zone state, flowing, and you just ride the wave of the universe. So that's my interpretation. Maybe I can say something more about the second one. Let me think about it. Yeah, the other way I can say is that there's life and death, but if you're like a little child, mind is empty and occupied in living daily life, looking at the sky and the butterfly and the curiosity. And in that state, he's like in the Garden of Eden. So there's no duality like life and death. Therefore, he won't be bothered. He's just be that little child, curious about the world, and riding the wave without him noticing it. So that's basically the point of this Koan. I don't know if he talks about, there are more explanation by Nakayama, but let me just go through. I just went through my way of looking at it, and then let's see what he says. Why don't Dogen teach everything from the beginning? You may ask. And Nakayama says, if you learn from the school what to do, how to live, and how are you effective, how effective are you to do so? Is it not that you learn from the word that you can live your life well, but the point, isn't it the point that you need to apply that ideas, what you have learned, and then you find a way to solve the problem. And isn't that the important thing? So if you go out, after education, graduating from school, whatever, and you go out to the society and you solve the problem by facing difficulties and you yourself to solve it, then you become the person that you can live. But if you depend on others, it may not be so easy at the end. Because each person's life may be different, and their view of the life and suggestion may be different. So you need to be self-sufficient to find a way. And that's the point of the religion or spirituality. What is the foundation, the basic principle? And there are various ways because, this is I'm talking, not Nakayama. I see various people, various ways, various talk about how to live life. And that's what it is. It's nature's way that we got this species and varieties of thought. And that is a nature's way by itself. And you can live with one principle and go through that. That's one. And that's why we've got so many different religions and teachings. And as for me, I go through various books and figuring out the meaning of it and how I apply. So that's the application and execution of the principles, what the basic principles, that I can find the path. So for that to happen, it is for each to find. And if you don't, you can have a group of people to work together and believe in pursuing something. But there's a self and there's a group of self. Like Catholic talk about the pain body. Well, I'm going off the tangent, but that's the point that you may want to go back to your own question, your own suffering, if there is, and find the passage, which is meaningful. I can talk more about the law of the universe and others, and I see Nakayama talking in this book. Let me see if I can capture the essence of what he says. He says the Buddha is about the function of your life, or the law of the universe in my term. Because how you are born on the earth is whatever event happened, follow the law of the universe. And he talks about the law of entropies, and the way we live is to come out of the chaos to make sense out of it. And that's how we evolve. Eating all the odd stuff create this mind and body, and that's a creation. So if we can use or relate to that, the program of the universe, I call it laws of nature. All the problems that comes with life can be resolved because we are one with the law of the universe. But he says, unfortunately, the functioning of the law of the universe is unconscious, cannot identify with words because the mind has limitation. That's my comment. You cannot control how the stomach should function or the heart should function. The law of the universe is doing the job, but however you use your mind, it may not be that simple, so you cannot see it. But the animals can make judgment without thinking or thinking without thinking, because they follow the law of the universe, the Garden of Eden. So why don't we let the source, the basis of our living, which is the law of the universe, and for that to bring out the wisdom? So that's what he says is Satori, awakening. Dogs and cats doesn't realize they have the Buddha or law of the universe. So for them, the Buddha doesn't exist or law of the universe exists. But that's how everything's happening. But for that reason, they don't have to worry about life and death. Maybe just a few more points. One of the koan in Zen is Joshu asking if the dog has the Buddha nature. On one occasion he said yes, on no other occasion he said no. And that's a paradox too. And Dogen points that the Buddha nature or law of the universe doesn't just come out in human without training, and without using it, there's no point. Then what is the training? He says the memories, whatever the experience we got, has to have it in our mind or in our brain as they are, jizai, by itself without being confined. So for example, by training or meditation, what it means is that all the memories of the past come out on its own. And then you can realize in your mind what that is as the wisdom. So it's like you have a problem. I may have mentioned in the other video. If the problem is something you cannot resolve it, think as much as you can. And if you cannot go any further, leave it alone. I mentioned about Oka and Poincaré. When they come up with the difficult problems of mathematics, that's the method they use. And that's the same as having a koan. You cannot solve it. You think the best you can. And you get to the point of you cannot go anywhere. And that's the no-mind state. And whatever happens, the law of nature will take place. Because as in cutting a finger and injured, we have a way of solving a problem in our body. Similarly, the problem or the suffering in the brain, if you don't touch it directly, but let the whole resolution to come about, like solving the problem every day, and have meditation, calm and quiet mind. Then you get to the samadhi state, and whatever the law of nature takes place at the time, they figure out all the memories and experience from what we've got and come up with a solution as wisdom. Not the mind, but the deeper part of the mind, if you want to call that, or unconsciousness. So that's the mechanism of the wisdom, and that's something I mentioned in various ways. So hopefully there may be something meaningful what I mentioned here, talking about this life and death issue, but can be applied how to live our life.